up, everyone? Welcome to part 5 of the Blender Basics tutorial series. In this part, we're going to be talking about materials. So how we're going to apply a material to this object, to multiple objects, and to different faces or parts of our object. So we can have multiple materials on one object and so on. But before we get started, let's go ahead and go to the Materials tab. So on the right-hand side of the outliner here, I'm going to go down to the Materials tab. It should look like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to select our cube here, hit X, and delete it. So now we're going to bring in a UV sphere. If you don't know how to bring up the add menu, you could always go up here or just hover over this. It'll show you the shortcut. So Shift A, let's add in a UV sphere under mesh. We'll scroll in a little bit to zoom in more. And right now, as you can see, there is no material on this sphere. It is using whatever the default that Blender has, which is this sort of shading slash color, but we may want to change the color around. In order to do that, we need to click this new button here. And once I do that, now we finally have a material. Now it is still the same color until we go to the base color here and change it around. We also have other different properties such as metallic, roughness, how rough the material is, how shiny it is. These are ways you can play around to create different and unique materials. I don't think it's going to do too much right now here because we're not in material mode. We are in shading mode, viewport shading. So in viewport shading, you're not going to really see your materials. You would need to go to the next tab over, which is viewport shading mode. Now you can also go under shading here, workspace, and you can see the shading there as well, your materials, or you can just click this to make it easier. And now we can see that color. So if I go to the color here and let's say I just lower the value slider, now it becomes darker, now it's a lighter value, and we can change our color here. That's one way you can go about changing your colors in case you want to like color code certain parts of your material for certain reasons. There are some reasons you may want to do this, like if you are creating an ID map where specific parts of your model need to be textured in a specific way, and it may be hard to just select it or paint on it that way. With materials, you can use it as a sort of ID mask, and then in something like Substance Painter, you can select that area and just color in that area or texture that specific area. So materials can be quite useful, but you can also use them to kind of decorate your models in the meantime until you learn how to texture. So now that we have one material, let's go ahead and add another one. We don't have the new material button here no more, and that's because we now have to add this plus. Once we do that, it's going to add another material slot here, and then we can add another material. So this material, we'll just call it color 2. And we can name our materials by just double clicking or right clicking and rename. We'll call this color 1. Keep in mind, color 1 is already applied to everything here. So color 2 will not update on here. So notice if I go to the color and I change it around, nothing is happening. And that's because this is the default and this has been applied to our whole model here. Now, if we want to, let's say, apply the second color material to the bottom half, the way we can do that is if we go into orthographic view, we want to go to front orthographic with num keypad 1. I'm going to go into edit mode, and what I'm going to do is go into vertex mode. I'm going to do Shift Z to go to wireframe, deselect everything, and I'm just going to select, or actually let's go to face selection mode so we can get all these faces. I'm going to go back out of wireframe so we can see what's going on. We're still in shading mode, and I'm gonna go to the second color here, and notice how we have assign, select, and deselect. What we want to do is we want to assign this color to what we have selected. So we're going to hit the assign button, and now as you can see, we have the second material applied to the bottom. And if we go into object mode, you can kind of see we now have something that looks like electrode or a pokeball or something. From there, we can go ahead and add another material. Let's add a third material. Since this kind of looks like electro, let's make some eyes. So we're going to do another new color, and let's change this color to like black or a darker color here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit 1 to go to front orthographic, hit tab, go to edit mode, and let's maybe select those two, and not this one, but this one right here. So I'm holding shift, left clicking, select both of these, and then we're going to go to this new material and we're going to do assign. And if we wanted to make, I guess, a little smiley face, we can select these faces and do a sign as well. So now we have something like this, and that's one way you can apply multiple materials to your object, whether you want multiple or just one. If you want to get rid of a material, you just click the minus button and that'll get rid of it. Same for here, and we would get rid of all that. But we'll go back real quick, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to duplicate it and I'm going to move it over here. Let's say we have a second object. Let's go ahead and delete all these materials. We're going to add in a new material now. We'll just call this object to color. We can apply either a different material to this object. So as you can see, we have that color here. We could go to any of these materials, go to the drop down here and change that color around if we wanted to do stuff that way. But we can have also separate materials or the same materials on different objects. So let's say we do want this red here, or maybe this white. What we can do is add another material, go to the drop down, and let's do color 1. And let's go ahead and go into edit mode for this one. We're going to go to front orthographic, go into wireframe, select all of these faces, go back, and then we're going to do a sign. And now we have, basically we're using the same material from here, just over here, and vice versa. So that's pretty much how materials work. Now for texturing, it's a lot different. We're not going to get into that in this video, but you can kind of mess around with this and just see what you can come up with. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this one as well. And we're going to spawn in another sphere. Now here's another thing that I want to kind of show you as well. We're going to go back into viewport shading, and I'm going to right click and do shade smooth. So we were in flat shaded mode. We want to be in smooth shading. Up here, we have a little drop down menu, and in this drop down menu, it can be quite helpful because there are certain things here that can help make our model look good. So we're not really seeing the material because we would have to be in the shading mode to do that. As we're modeling, we may want to have like something that looks more presentable and nice. So what I always do, especially when it comes to sculpting, is under lighting right here, you can go to Matcap, and as you change to Matcap, it will give you a variety of different material options here. So as you can see, we could choose from a variety of different shading or lighting styles. Over here, they're basically just materials, and a lot of times I like to use these two, this one and this one right here. And as you can see, it changes things around from the default, which is that we got a little bit more of a gradient going on, and it can look a lot nicer. Now there's other things here that you can mess around with as well. I wouldn't touch any of this at all. We also have cavity here. Now what's cool about cavity is it will highlight certain parts of your models that have edges, and any valleys will be darkened. So it's best to show this on a cube. So I'm going to bring one in, and as you can see, with cavity on, it highlights those edges. So if I were to go here, we have ridge and valley. Ridge is the highlights, how bright you want them to be, and valleys is the darker parts. Now we don't have any valleys here, so we can't really see that, but this is one cool way to highlight your model and so on. So if I were to change this around, just make it a little bit more of a complex shape, and let's go back into object mode, you can now see the highlights and so on. This model isn't detailed enough to show the valleys. What we're kind of getting here is pretty much that. Now I could shade this smooth, but I would have to add bevels and stuff to make this look good again. So I'll go 2 and I'll tighten the bevels a little bit. We'll do 0.05 or maybe lower, 0.03. Okay, maybe even lower than that. And now you can kind of see how things start to look a lot nicer as you mess around with stuff like that. If you want to go for a nicer presentation as you're modeling, or if you're showing something off. Now, keep in mind, cavity is really taxing, so it can make your viewport lag. So you may want to have this off. Matcap should be completely fine. And yeah, that's pretty much it with materials. Over here, you just add your different materials for your objects. And over here, you can mess around with Matcap and the cavity option to get some nicer looking results. So anyways, that's going to be it for this video. In the next video, we are going to step it up a little bit. We're going to take a break before we get into rendering, and we're actually going to model a locker. I'll see you in the next part.